Falcons, we are back with our next book in the Read Across America series, and this book takes place in the southwest region of the United States in Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona. And the book is called Grand Canyon by Jason Chin. And here is a map of the Grand Canyon. It shows how large it is. Grand Canyon is one of the largest canyons in the world. It is 277 miles long and as much as 18 miles wide and more than a mile deep. But it is much more than just a big hole in the ground. It's home to an astonishing variety of plants and animals. The canyon is much hotter and drier at the bottom than it is at the top. Because of this, different groups of plants and animals or ecological communities are found at different elevations in the canyon. The hottest part of the canyon is at the very bottom, a 1,000-foot deep chasm called the Inner Gorge. The Inner Gorge may be the hottest part of the canyon, but there are oases in this desert. Creeks bring life-giving water into the gorge, and a wide variety of species live along their banks, including frogs, dragonflies, mule deer, and the endangered southwestern willow flycatcher. Many of these creatures are permanent residents that rely on running water for survival, while others are visitors drawn here by their thirst. Eventually, every creek in the canyon flows into the largest stream of all, the Colorado River. The Colorado River runs the entire length of the Grand Canyon, continually washing sediment away and slowly deepening its channel. It's been cutting into the land for around 5 million years, slicing through layer after layer of rock. Today, it is cutting into the Vishnu basement rocks. These rocks are part of the continental basement, the bottommost layer of rock on the continent. The basement rocks are the oldest in the canyon, as much as 1.84 billion years old. Many younger rock layers are stacked on top of them. If you hike out of the canyon, you'll pass younger and younger layers as you climb, as if walking up through time. Above the basement layer, you'll reach the Grand Canyon Supergroup. Here you may find ripple rocks preserved in the stone. Clues like these tell us what this place was like when the rock was formed. They are like windows to the past. This is the Grand Canyon 1.2 billion years ago, when the only living things on Earth were microbes such as algae and bacteria. Although these were too small to see, these primitive organisms filled the oceans and were some of the earliest life forms on the planet. The mud from this tidal flat eventually transformed into a layer of solid rock, and these ripple marks were preserved in the process. They are now part of the Grand Canyon Supergroup. After climbing out of the inner gorge, you'll find yourself on a broad, sun-baked slope. The plants and animals here are well adapted for life with little water. Black-throated sparrows can go for long periods without taking a drink. Many creatures sleep during the heat of the day. Pocket mice forage at night and are preyed on by owls and rattlesnakes, who are adapted for hunting in the dark. These animals are living on the rock layer called the Bright Angel Shale, which formed more than 200 million years after the Grand Canyon Supergroup. Trilobite fossils in the rocks tell us that this spot once lay beneath the sea. This is the Grand Canyon 515 million years ago. By this time in Earth's history, many multicellular plants and animals had evolved. Soft-bodied jellyfish floated above clam-like brachiopods and tiny hyoliths, some of the first creatures on Earth with shells. Trilobites, the first animals known to have had eyes, roamed the sea floor. Around them, worm-like creatures burrowed into the sediment. sediment that eventually transformed into the Bright Angel Shale. Towering over the Bright Angel Shale is a massive cliff called the Red Wall Limestone. The Red Wall has many inaccessible caves that provide nesting spots for one of the rarest birds in the world, the California condor. With a 9-foot wingspan and weighing as much as 23 pounds, the condor is the largest land bird in North America. Condors are vultures, and during the Ice Age, they fed on the carcasses of megabeasts like giant ground sloths. Since then, their population has declined due to changes in climate and human activity, and now they are close to extinction. Above the Red Wall Cliff is a slope of red rust red rock. The climate here is not as hot and dry as below, and pinyon pines and Utah junipers are common. Many creatures such as squirrels, chipmunks, and wood rats eat their seeds. These small rodents are preyed on by gopher snakes and coyotes. At the top of the slope is the rock layer called the Hermit Formation. Fossils in the Hermit tell us that long ago, this spot was home to huge dragonflies with 8-inch wingspans. This is Grand Canyon 280 million years ago. By this time, life was flourishing on land and trees, ferns, fish, amphibians, and reptiles had evolved. The sea had retreated from the region and rivers flowed across the landscape. Seed ferns and conifers grew along the banks, and amphibians left their tracks in the mud that eventually transformed into the Hermit Formation. Above the red slopes of the Hermit are pale 350-foot cliffs. Bighorn sheep easily navigate their narrow ledges with specifically adapted hooves. In the fall, mating season, males compete for dominance by smashing each other with their battering ram horns. These cliffs have been carved from the Coconino sandstone. Fossil footprints in the rock tell us that on this spot 275 million years ago, an early reptile walked across huge windswept dunes. With little water, life here would have been difficult, but the desert wasn't entirely barren. Among the other species that called it home were scorpions, millipedes, and spiders, and the desert wind whipped across the landscape. Sand piled up in the thin layers. Today, those layers are preserved in the Coconino sandstone as thin, angled surfaces called crossbeds. As you approach the rim of the canyon, the climate becomes cooler and more moist. Vegetation on the sloping Toroweap Formation is more dense than below. Before exiting the canyon, however, there is one more layer to scale, the Kaibab Formation. The Kaibab's limestone cliffs are full of marine fossils that tell us about life here 270 million years ago, when oceans again covered the lands. Fossils in the Kaibab Formation tell us of a complex ecosystem. The seafloor was home to sea lilies and bryozoans, sponges, and coral. Trilobites and the brachiopods lived alongside them. Nautiloids, and as many as 40 species of shark patrolled the water above them. Many of these creatures, such as coral and brachiopods, had hard shells. When they died, their shells piled up on the sea floor and eventually transformed into the limestone of the Kaibab Formation. If you ascend from the Colorado River to the south rim of Grand Canyon, you will have climbed nearly 5,000 feet and passed through 3 distinct habitats. Above the rim, you'll find one more. The Ponderosa Pine is home to tassel-eared squirrels, deer, and elk. Bobcats, coyotes, and hawks hunt here as well. as well as the top predators in the canyon, mountain lions. Because of its great size and depth, Grand Canyon has a wide range of climates and habitats, and species that call the canyon home today survive on ancient rocks, rocks that will tell us about life here long before there was a canyon. It's taken millions of years of weathering and erosion to expose these rocks and shape this breathtaking landscape, and these processes continue to this day, relentlessly excavating the grandest canyon on earth. And let's see if I can zoom in to show you. I've never been to the Grand Canyon, but I hope to get there someday. Looks pretty amazing to me. All right, Falcons, I will be back tomorrow to read to you the last of our 5 books in a Read Across America series. And I saved the last one for this area that we live in, the West. So I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.